So yeah, I'm Patrick Boblin. Just quickly about me, I have a background in tech. I've been writing for my whole life. I wanted to be a creative writer at some point in college, and then sort of got sidetracked into art, and then ended up working in software, and just meandered into New York politics, like a lot of people do. And so yeah, I'll just give you a tour of like what it's been like for me to grab something out of the queue as an experience we've all had, and you can't imagine what the hell it's going to be like to try to write about ball bearings for 2,000 words when it's like, do I need ball bearings? Like, probably. So just real quick, I just want everybody to sit next to somebody because we're going to have a few exercises. So get a little cozy. I'll talk about myself, and you can ignore me while I talk about myself because I would do that. So yeah, I just picked some boring books for you to look at. Beans, a history. The loss of Deal Bus Depot. I'm sure there's 1,000 pages in there of that. You have to really get into it. You have to really tap into something when you want to write about a subject that you find boring. And a lot of people find, I find Forex boring. Anna's all over Forex. What do you find boring, Naomi? Forex is boring. Yeah. So we just hope that Anna's around so we can hand it over to her. Exactly. So writing about boring subjects. For me, I just kind of want to, some of this stuff might seem obvious, some maybe less so. Writing about boring subjects, your knowledge is cumulative. So you're only going to be both bored and uninformed once. So like the next time you write about it, you'll be able to tap into those same links, et cetera, and kind of get into a flow that's a lot closer to something that you know about or care about. So a boring subject it's not always permanently boring, because suddenly you're a numerologist, as I say. And so does anybody know what that means? Like, it's this thing where like this idea that numbers are magic, and like if you think of a number like your magic, my special number of 9, and you start seeing 9 everywhere and blah blah blah. So if you start writing about ball bearings, you'll see ball bearings everywhere, et cetera, et cetera. You'll see tires everywhere. And so that sort of has happened to me a number of times, and I'm sure it's happened to you guys. I wrote an article about like top 10 things to do in Portland, and then like I happened to go to Portland a week later, and then I was like, oh shit, I just wrote myself a travel guide. I could like go to all the things that I want to see in Portland. It was like, oh, the Rose Garden. I don't know. It was fucking beautiful. It was amazing. So this kind of stuff happens. So what it also does for me is it builds your personal network. Like, especially like where I am in politics, I talk to a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds. I don't know anything about what they do, but maybe I talked about Forex once, and now I can be like, oh yeah, I know what that word means. So and you can impress your next clients with some knowledge that you've gained while you've been writing about these boring stuff. So what I wanted you guys to do maybe is just give me a couple of things I wrote on the Slack channel. I don't know. Did anybody see my post on the Slack channel about just a few boring subjects that you've had? So can I just get a hand if anybody has one? Yes. That's a good one. I like that one. How chocolate helps migraines and it doesn't. Linear actuators, but you got the links in your history now. So if you get a second linear actuator, you're at least like a little bit closer there. Anna. Agile programming. You didn't know about agile programming. Nah.
1,500 words on the 2018 Volkswagen Atlas.
Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah, I can't do the Volkswagen Atlas. 70.
Well, I have 2 things. One, this is random. I love videos like that.
Oh, thanks.
2, I agree with Nat. Well, cars. I was just going to say
Cars in general. Yeah. What's your name? Michelle. What's yours?
2,000 words about
Only one softball bat. 2,000. That's a badass bat. Last one. What's your name? Rebecca. What's yours?
1,500 words on
Turbidity. Okay, good luck with that. Bless you. Bless your heart. So here's how I start when I hit turbidity. I go to my catalog of shit that I know, and maybe like pull out your notebooks now and just kind of like write this for yourself. Like you can half listen if you want. For me, I was having a conversation, or no, I was at a comedy show. A couple of friends of mine are stand-up comics, much like my friend Lerone, and I'm sitting at a show, and they're talking about being a nanny, and I was like, oh shit, I was a nanny for 3 months when I lived in Berlin. I mean, this is like a memorable time, yet somehow I forgot that I did this. And so like weird jobs that you've had, like tap into your experience or how much you can relate to a subject. So for me, I worked in software. I worked as an artist and filmmaker, whatever that means. I worked in restaurants in the past, so I know a little bit about equipment, service industry, etc. I lived in Berlin for 1.5 years, so I know like what it's like to travel. I have a pet. We get lots of fun pet articles. I took some agriculture and fabrication courses in college, so I know things about something called integrated pest management. Does anybody know what that is? It's actually my favorite thing in agriculture. It's where if you have a problem with like beetles, you introduce a specific type of spider, and the spider eats the beetles, and then you don't have to use pesticides. It's actually kind of dope. So like it's just something that like I find super interesting. And I took fabrication courses, so I know like the difference between galvanized steel and stainless steel, stupid stuff like that. And I also, like you, I worry about health insurance and my savings, and so I Google stuff, and so I've accrued a random collection of knowledge about these things. And so all these things that I like have a passing interest in or whatever, or have had weird jobs doing in the past, they tap into my perspective on like a otherwise boring subject. So like, if you want to know about paintbrush bristles, well, shit, I know that there is a certain type of paintbrush bristle. I kept having to go down to the store when I interned for an artist in Berlin for 1 year, and, there was a certain type that sucked and a certain type that was good. And so, like, I can start from there, so stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know how this got in here. Sorry, guys. I have a really terrible dog. So I think of myself as, I call my dog a furry Roomba. I think of my brain, though, or myself as like a gooey knowledge Roomba. You walk around the world and you're like sucking up different ideas and different thoughts as you move around. So, think about it this way. Like, have you ever like lived in a weird place, or just like a place, 6 months you worked on the factory line in Dayton, Ohio, in the 1970s, and or something like that, and you're like, I know what like a housing market is like there, or something like that. So when you get that article that's like how to sell a house in Columbus or Dayton, Ohio, you can be like, oh, let me start tapping into what I know, or neighborhood names at least. That is like things like that, like make your otherwise distanced article like much more relatable. Like if you start mentioning neighborhoods, like when I see a New York article, I'm sure Catherine can relate to this, or even Rachel, like you see an article and you're like, oh, I can say like the East Village has this, and the West Village has that, and go to Brooklyn for this. And just those little bits will like make the client like your writing more, even if you have no clue what you're talking about. So anyway, if you ever took a left field class in high school, like I don't know, I don't have an example for that one. Basket weaving. Yeah. Yeah. So, did you ever have a really weird job? Who had a really weird job? Yell it out. What's that? Ballroom dancing. That is an odd job. Or like what work your grandparents did. So we're living in this society where we're all freelancers working off of our computers, but like, oh, I saw my grandparents go do this kind of work in the past, etc. Just like any place to start to ignite that fire, that get that pilot light going is where your challenge lies. And if you have secret nerdy obsessions, I'm not going to confess any of mine to you guys, but there's stuff that we all obsess over. Tracy Chapman, I love Tracy Chapman. Her new album is really good. So now now that you've started thinking about this, you're a party crasher, okay? And what do you have to do as a party crasher? You have to try to fit in. You're at someone else's wedding. You're like, okay, I met Steve at the door. Steve is an accountant. Who do I know here? I know Steve, and I know that's the groom and that's the bride. Okay, so you know lingo, you know where you are, you know some maybe important figures, you know some dates, some basic facts, news items. You just start accruing these things together, because if you're going to have to talk about ball bearings for 2,000 words, you're going to need to know you're gonna need to start somewhere. So wherever you can start is a way to go, and an angle that you can take, and it is probably unique to the client. And you can, that way you can make it a little spicy. If you disagree with something, you can be like, actually, this ball bearings are bad for this kind of airplane or whatever. So that's how I like to think of it. I like to think of like the challenge, like of being at like someone else's party. I want to get the benefits, free drinks, or in this case, $28, and and like just kind of be engaged with what's going on. So I don't know. Is there a glitch? You guys have? I don't know. I keep seeing. I don't know what happened. Okay, I'll just skip ahead. So what I want to hear right now is I want you guys to come up, just shout out and invent like a boring subject, like 10 facts about wooden chairs. So just raise your hand, and I just want to hear some, and we write some of these down if you think they're funny. Nat.
What about your guide to ventilator care and management at a skilled nursing facility?
That's a pretty solid one. Is that right off? That's right off of the queue. Yeah. I saw some in the queue that were commercial steel building types. Okay. Best 3D printer nozzle type. So not 3D printers, but the best nozzle. I think Nat's wife is the only one who might be able to do that, right? Oh, you okay? Okay. Anybody got one? You just invent one right now. It's fine. The state of Scrum in Utah. Yo, I danced with that devil once. Who's agile coach? Yeah. Yeah. There's a few. Stephanie's got one. Yeah. How to convert decimals into or whatever. Yeah. So we're all thinking now. We're all thinking of our worst. And so I kind of wanted you to take some of my advice, and we'll start here. So here's one I did the other day, and it says, "What does data-driven mean?" And I looked. I went ahead and I Googled it. I'm like, cool. It's 12 words. I need 900 and whatever more. So then I started clicking through the links, as we all do, and then I found this. Well, this is my cheat sheet. This, to me, is like sifting through, when you go for the gold rush and you're just like sifting, and you're like, I can't find it. This is my little gold nugget that's going to fix my broken axle and get me on the rest of the way on the Oregon Trail. So I take the signs here. So there's not much above. There's like a short introduction. There's Simon Says at the bottom is the end. And then they're in the middle, those signs. That's where I'm going to start. So I take that. This is how I read about a boring subject, is I take that and I pop it into my window there. And then I use each one of those points to start, making a different, a different subheading. So it says at the top, the first one says, it means being willing to complement human decision-making with data and analytics. Okay. So I turned it to, it means giving your sales team a leg up. And so what does it mean? It means running business experiments and split tests as powerful as Amazon. Oh, my boy. Okay, so how about it means taking well-considered risks? And so, like, I keep building from an article that way. And that way, I start building something that's, like, going to have my voice, but it's also couched in something that's, like, relevant to the subject, and I can start moving on my way. I haven't really used a lot of in this example. I haven't used a lot of my experience, but I've used more of my HOTH experience. Of like being able to sort of flip the script in these. So here's the ways that I've described using the links that you get. So there's buffet style where you sort of graze and you open all three of the links and you're like, okay, good point here, good point there, good point here, and you kind of try to match them together and you rewrite those headings and you kind of fill it in and you're like, okay, I have a unique article now that's based on facts that can use my voice. And, you don't use too much, you just use that little bit of scaffolding to get you going. There's the mansplain style, which I think some of us have been guilty of, where we see a position on something, we see an angle, and we say, well, actually, this is totally wrong. This is kind of the question I asked Lily earlier. It's like you start reading about something and you realize like, oh, this is actually kind of off base or whatever. So some people might have this like when you're talking about like loans or like health insurance or something like. If you have experience in health insurance in Ohio and the angle is like this, well, you can kind of weave your experience of living in Ohio, and I keep using Ohio for some reason, living in Ohio, needing health insurance with what the client wants, and that kind of like puts some gas in your tank. There's also what I do called shuffle the deck when I can only find one example, and it's really technical and it's really tight. So I just kind of like reorder them so that it at least has a different structure. And I'm like, okay, what can I start gnawing on? Once I've reordered the information that's there, because sometimes it's you get a technical article and it's like there's two articles about types of industrial brake pads or a certain type of industrial brake pad. And you can only find two sources, and it's pretty much all facts. It's like, if you have this machine, you need this. So you have to kind of weave your way around. So does anyone else have a way they would describe their own method? Anybody? Colleen.
If I have something I really don't know anything about, I kind of start from the primary keywords and secondary keywords and what the requirements are in HOTH land.
Mm-hmm.
So I just start with catchy introduction, but I'm going to stick the primary keyword, and I put the primary keyword, and then I have like my headings.
Mm-hmm.
Here are some kind of good headings.
Mm-hmm.
Once I do an outline with like sections that are going to get me to the word count, and then have like conclusion as the thing, then I'm like, oh, now I'm ready to write something, and then it's easier to kind of stick information in once you have an idea.
You get that framework going. Yeah, so my style, I like that. So my style is a little bit like I come up with my points. I usually, for like 1,000 words, I come up with 4 or 5 if I can find some information. If I can find no information, it might be like 6 or 7. And then I fill those in the middle, and then I go at the top and I say, you got it all wrong. And at the bottom, I'm like, now you get it, baby. So it's like that's how I try to spin that whole thing. But I like yours. That's a way that I started writing, was to have the introduction at the top and then go through and like figure out, okay, where is this going to be? Where is that going to be? I like that. What do you got, Anna?
I'm pretty nerdy, so I can get curious about almost anything for at least a short amount of time. So I just pretend that I'm in school or a class or something, and I've been assigned this thing, and I get really curious about it and really interested in how I can get an A on the paper, if you will. And I just kind of dig into it and make it fun and explore it, and then when it's over, it's just over, and I can move on and do that again for the next piece.
So you think of it like an open book essay test kind of thing. I like that.
It is a school paper, which
That's
is not motivating to most people, but I love to learn.
yeah. Well, if you built up a method that worked, then like shit, use it now. Absolutely. Who else had their hand up? Elise.
The opposite thing, I write, so I'm like, how this piece? I'm like, oh my god, I don't know what to do. I skip the intro, I start with the only paragraph of information like I know. I'll do the first heading.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I've written that, I'm like, oh, I already have 300 words, cool. And then it kind of like calms me down,
Mm-hmm.
puts me on a roll. And then I do the heading. By the time I get all the points finished, I'm like at 50. I'm like, cool, I have like 150 words.
All right, so you're wrestling with the word count. So as soon as you make it a smaller like demon for you, yeah.
I do kind of something similar. If I think I don't want to do this, this is terrible. I kind of look through the seed links for their subheaders, use
Mhm.
that to make mine, and then skip the intro completely.
Yeah.
Last, so that I can just dive into the actual information and deal with the conclusion later, because then I can actually make it address what I've already written.
Yeah.
Just stitch it together.
Yeah, I like that. It's similar to my method. You get the subheadings going, then you go to the top and the bottom. Yeah, Murray.
I guess it's more of a tip than anything. But yeah, kind of taking, like going off of that,
Yeah. Okay, so what is this tool called? Answer the Public? I've never heard of this. Okay, Answer the Public. It sounds actually pretty cool. AnswerThePublic.com. Okay, that's good. Anybody else got a super special method? Because I'm going to move on. Okay. So this is where this is the arts and crafts version. I am a teacher by nature, and I went to art school. And there's a great visual. I like visual examples of things. And so I'm going to play this like 2-minute excerpt, if that's okay with you guys, of one of my favorite artists. It's sort of a stop motion animation. So I think it'll give you a visualization of like what it's like to be the primary information, what it's like to be the subject, and what it's like to, like what it can do when you start over manipulating the subject. Oh, it's okay. So I just really like that artist, and I thought of it as like a good analogy. So it's not a perfect analogy, but in some way I think of the sort of group of vegetables and fruits as maybe the subject. Those kitchen items, that's the technical information about the subject, and then the sort of academic tools, the school tools, that's sort of the academic or editorial perspective. But you see, after things have gone through this sort of technical aspect, the subject could contradict your editorializing. You know what I mean? Like the subject itself could necessitate, like, could require facts about. So you know what I mean. So like ball bearings are going to have some basic elements. They're going to be made out of metal. They're going to have a certain weight. They're going to have a certain size, and they're going to have to fit in certain. You're going to need certain ball bearings for certain uses, and so that's not going to change. So that's kind of where I see the subject kind of pushing back on your theorizing. So you have to remember that, like, if you manipulate that subject too much when you have a lot of technical information, you need a lot of technical information, you got to kind of stick to the books. You know what I mean? You've got to kind of stick to the facts that you have. And sometimes, it's hard to like pad those words without adding bullshit. But you have to stay true to the facts, because at the end of the day, if we're dealing with a highly technical article like that versus something that you just don't necessarily know about yet, you're going to come up, you're going to hit a wall, and the client's going to send it back saying like, hey, this sounds like it's about wood and we do metal, I wanted to work together. That's why I had everybody sit together, and I wanted to do an exercise where we challenge each other to come up with a random subject and to come up with 5 headings about it, sort of based on your perspective. So I wanted to do like 10 minutes of this, and then we can kind of talk about it, kind of brainstorm it, and Q&A. Is that cool? All right, great. So we're gonna do that. Okay, I think because we're moving lunch up a couple minutes, so because I'm boring. Can I just get some volunteers? Can you read me your article and your like 5 headings? You guys started out here. Colleen?
What is the best paint for boat exteriors? What is the best paint for boat exteriors? We're talking about types of commercial paints. What are boats made of? So what boat you're going to be painting. What's the consequence of fucking up the paint job? What are the aesthetics that you're looking for in your boat? And then should you DIY this or should you take it to a professional since the client's probably a boat painter?
Yo, that's solid. That's a good one. Can we get a little clap, a little snap for Colleen and team? Yeah. Who's up? All right.
So we came up with the topic of the composting toilets. So we want like an A+ for boring and disgusting. So our topics points were, where can you put the compost after you've composted it? Do they smell bad? How to prepare them? What states allow them? Because apparently it's illegal in some places. And do you need a septic system when you have a compost?
Because the client might be a septic or oh, you guys know your shit. All right.
Olivia hit me with a guide to tax forms.
Okay.
So like I went with, when you get hired for like not a freelance job, you fill out that one form that there's like, how much do you want me to withhold? Yeah. So like, what kind of tax forms you'll probably see in your life. So like that one and the regular tax form. And then like your guide to each withholding. Like if you have children, here's how to know to put a 1 or a 2.
I like that. Yeah, good job. It's something we all need. It seems relevant. Who's a volunteer? Over here. What's your name?
Penny.
Penny?
Yes. So
Penny and Darla?
Yeah.
Okay.
Her topic was everything you need to know about hydraulic power packs. So we went with, what is a hydraulic power pack? What are the parts of a hydraulic power pack? How do the parts work together? What industries commonly use them, and which one is right for you?
Nice. That's really great. The client's gonna love that. Nat and
we took a cue from you. Said, "What's new in beans?" So opening up this 1,500 worder with the history of beans, then different different bean varieties, then a discussion on GMO versus organic beans, what hybridizations are happening in beans, and then new culinary uses for beans like meat substitutes, new flavors, and finally the conclusion: how will you use new beans?
Yeah. That's a really swinging bean article. I kind of like that. What do we got? Anybody over here? We got volunteers?
Thank you. I really hate online gambling. I had to write about it before, and that's just like, it's so boring. It took me days and days, and I just hit my head against the wall. So I came up with some things about that. How to know when your winning streak is about to end. That's a good thing to know. How to quit your job and online gamble. Oh. Why not, right? I mean, if we can freelance, somebody's out there doing gambling for sure, without a doubt. Tax information about gambling, about your gambling winnings, because I actually don't know about that, and now I'm kind of curious. Huh? Told you, someone does it. Someone knows. Yeah, 6 degrees of separation. How to play multiple games at one time, because, more games, more money. And then how to read people. when you're gambling online, because, how do you know?
Yeah, that's great. That's a good one. That's good. Let's do one more, and then I think I'm going to conclude it. You guys?
Yeah. You want to do it?
Sure. We have 5 things to know about fixing an electrical socket. Safety first, gather your supplies, what not to do, access and disable the circuit breaker, and types of electrical sockets.
Yeah, that's a good. You guys, what I like about these is like I don't always do this, and I probably get dinged for it. Is like you guys are thinking of the client as you're doing it. It's very, very good. I write for pleasure, and they they can make money off if they want. So I already asked what your methods were. So sort of taking a cue from Catherine, I just wanted to give you a few of my focus tips. So I think it's funny because I think we all have some of the same stuff, which is cool. So you got to find your time of the day. My time of the day is people have asked me like what my method is. So I do about 9,000 a day on like a regular day, and I'll bang out 5,000, and then because I do like stuff in politics or whatever that's old people hours, so they'll start stuff at like 5 or 6, so I'll start maybe around 10, and so I'll bang out those first 5, and then I know I can do the next 3 or 4 like no matter what, like later in the day. But you also need to find your breaking point, as a lot of people have said. So I just want to reiterate something Catherine told me. She told me, you will burn out. You will burn out doing this 7 days a week. You will burn out. I was like, screw you, man. You don't know me. I'm not going to burn out. I'm made of steel or whatever. And eventually I freaking did. And I had to take like 3-4 days off of doing it. And now I'm very protective of my weekends, as everybody has told you. I'm all about rewards and snacks, so I kind of fuck with myself a little bit. So like, if I have like 3 more articles to do, I'm like, I put goat cheese on a cracker that I really like, and I put it right on the table next to me, out of reach. And so I'm like writing, I'm like, oh, you son of a, oh my God, you better finish this article because that looks good. I'm like worse than my dog. So your time off should be vital to you. I find I get more meaning out of it. Like this summer, I was like going down to Coney Island and just going on the beach and like reading Stephen King for the first time by myself. It was actually like the dopest summer I've had in a long time. And don't let your dog distract you. They go out when they go out. You tell them blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I guess that's everything I had to say. I'm excited about everybody else speaking today, and thank you so much, and I will see you online.